Hello, all. This is Micah and Graham with Brother Telepathy. We got a new video for you today. This is going to be the 2024 NFL Draft regrade. So all we're going to do is, just as the title says, we're going to go through and we're going to take a look at some of these picks from this last year and grade it on a scale of like you would in school, like A, B, C through F. And yeah, so here we go. We're going to take it away.
Let's do it.
First up, we've got Chicago Bears number one pick. Obviously, what they got from the Carolina Panthers, Caleb Williams. So, Graham, you want to go ahead and give us your thoughts first?
Yeah, sure thing. So, yeah, I mean, especially at the time, this was obviously the only way that they were going to go. Caleb was the consensus number one prospect. I definitely think one of those, you could argue generational talent type of potential players there at the top. One of the concerns coming out, if any, was like not being able to necessarily play within structure potentially, and just maybe in general holding on to the ball a little too long. I think that did show up as somewhat of an issue for Caleb in his first year, but still showed plenty of the flashes that we thought he would show. I'm still high on Caleb Williams going forward. We'll really be interested to see what happens with Ben Johnson there.
Yeah, it's particularly for me. I was really low on his ability to play within structure, and that was definitely a huge flaw of his first year. Probably the biggest flaw of his rookie year.
Got to be the biggest one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all in all, though, I think you pretty much hit it. It was the only pick, so I think it's a solid season. A minus is the grade that I gave, and Graham ultimately gave a B, so or B plus, excuse me. So we kind of landed together on B plus. Thought it was a fair grade, so I'm
Yeah,
cool on
a
that.
little bit of projection too. We know that he's going to be good going forward. We and again, I don't think he played badly. He didn't turn the ball over, or anything like that really too badly either. So we feel comfortable there.
I definitely feel good about his ability to protect the ball, but that's enough about him. We can go ahead and keep moving
Yeah,
on the train here.
yeah,
So Graham, you want to take this one away?
yeah. So yeah, next one here, Jaden Daniels. Obviously, I mean, this was one of the several hits. We're going to go through a lot of hits in this first
There's a
round.
lot of
This is
hits,
a
a lot
very
of
deep
hits.
first round. So a lot of high grades actually, but yeah, this one's obvious. Jaden Daniels. Reason I went A versus A plus on this one is just simply because, and again, and this really shouldn't be a knock to Jaden whatsoever, but it just nature of it. I think it should be a little bit. Is that he did go into a perfect situation, and I think Cliff Kingsbury designed the offense perfectly for Jaden Daniels. And so my only concern is potentially if they do lose out on Cliff Kingsbury at some point, does that affect Jaden Daniels in a negative manner? And that sort of thing. Because as we know, with defensive-minded head coach, it's very hard to keep that offensive rhythm going throughout losing them. And so, I'm not saying Cliff Kingsbury going to get a job anytime particularly soon, but it's the only knock I could really think of. He was so poised this year, played really well. So yeah, A plus is an easy answer too.
It's a fair concern, totally. Like Cliff Kingsbury absolutely played to Jaden Daniels' strengths. Like Cliff Kingsbury likes his mobile guys. He likes his like quick read guys. Kyle, he was even fine with Kyler. It was just ultimately didn't work out. They didn't stack up enough wins for him to stay in Arizona. But A plus given what their expectations were, like I'm German, what their expectations were versus where they ended up. So A plus for me is pretty easy on this one.
Yeah, you take this
And
one away.
yeah, Drake May, and everybody's knocking on him currently because he made a Pro Bowl like with 15 touchdowns and 10 picks or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and for face value, like yeah, not a great statistical season, but I think if you break it down, he didn't play the first four games, mismanaged the whole situation from Gerard Mayo. Drake May's a baller, and he was teetering. Actually, he was my QB1 coming out of the class. I had him higher than Caleb Williams just because I was so worried about Caleb Williams' ability to play within structure. I like Drake May. I thought he had a great season. And moving forward, which is a large part of these grades, ultimately I landed on A minus.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at the situation around him, you could definitely make a strong argument for worst in the entire league. Just all around offensive line, awful. No weapons, no running game, really. I mean, no defense, really. I mean, really, you maybe couldn't have more working against you than Drake May did. And
It's the worst situation in football, comfortably,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and to show the flashes that he did, and again, I think we were both pretty high on him coming out of the class last year. So yeah, I feel like A minus is comfortable. He probably is going to end up being very good, but this is a safe, because again, he didn't play flawlessly, but I think this is a fair grade given the circumstances.
The top half of the draft in last year just was a ton of hits, like
Yeah.
more so than usual, especially the quarterbacks. Like I feel like every quarterback, and we'll get to them, played particularly well. But like I said,
Yeah.
we'll get to that. Graham, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so our boy Marvin Harrison Jr. here. So yeah, highly touted as a generational receiver prospect coming out of the class last year. And part of my grade, and I think you're gonna maybe agree a little bit here, Micah. I'll let you talk though because you're a little bit lower than me. You know, you've got Malik Neighbors who really went off, and a lot of people said he could be wide receiver one potentially. You had Brian Thomas Jr. who we'll get to later as well, and Marvin Harrison Jr. performed worse than both of them. And so I'm still fairly high on him. I think he's still got those high end wide receiver one traits. He's still built as a good X receiver at the next level, but would have liked to see more production out of him. Where he was drafted, you'd think he would have been targeted maybe a little bit more and put up some bigger numbers. But yeah, I think the reason I'm a bit lower on this one was, again, overall lack of production and the guys who went behind him.
Yeah, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse because I think exactly what you said is exactly why I have him so low. I think that C is harsh. I wanted to keep it pretty harsh with these grades because I mean, especially someone like Marvin Harrison with the expectations he had was so high. Given that, combined with maybe he was the worst first round receiver, that's not saying a lot considering all the first
Yeah,
round receivers, well, except for the back half, but we'll get there.
we'll get there.
Yeah, it's C. I think C is pretty harsh, but I think C is fair considering he had one real Marvin Harrison like game. But, that's not his fault. Like you said, he's going to be great going forward. So this is definitely a grade that's more of like a now grade versus a 5 years from now grade.
Right, and that's kind of the thing we've done here a little. It's blending a little bit of projection and based on what happened in this 1 year. So it's a bit of a blend. But yeah,
It's not a perfect science, but we got it down a little bit. But
yeah. But we pretty much were consensus on this one. Joe Alt obviously was an awesome prospect and clearly played up to that standard for the Chargers. So good for them. They've got their bookend tackles, obviously set for a long time.
for a decade,
Yeah, they'll need to improve that interior of their offensive line. But yeah, Jim Harbaugh wanted to build up their O line, and they did that. So yeah, I think he was the safest pick coming out at tackle, and he played that way.
he delivered. He's got to be the safest prospect. Like you said, like this was the most obvious hit, and ultimately that's what it was. And he's arguably the best rookie in the entire draft. So that's saying a lot. Obviously, offensive linemen never get their flowers, so Joe Alt is definitely getting his from me.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say too is it's very difficult to come out in your rookie year and be a really good tackle, or offensive lineman in general, but tackle especially. So the fact that he
100%.
was a lot better than serviceable is a huge win for Joe Alt.
Yeah, and you'll see that later in the draft when we get to some of these other offensive linemen. It's kind of hard to scale them, mostly because, like you said, they're not good their rookie year. They kind of have to grow into the role. So huge props to Joe Alt. Graham, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so neighbors, I think we talked about it a little bit beforehand. We're pretty much aligned in this one that obviously this dude's a stud. We gave A minus just because there were some injuries throughout the year for neighbors, so it wasn't fully healthy. He even admitted that actually recently in an interview at the Super Bowl, was saying that he wasn't healthy, so that was kind of his biggest priority coming into this next year. But yeah, dude's a stud. Giants got their franchise receiver one for again a decade, like you said. So good for them.
Yeah, not much else to cover on. I think you nailed it. The injuries is what bumped him down to an A minus for me, but great player, obviously. Graham, I'll let you talk again since this is your Titans, but you go ahead.
Yeah. So no, definitely had to talk with this one. So admittedly, at the time, I was not super happy with this pick. Just because I felt like we needed a true staple at left tackle. J.C. Latham was playing right tackle at Alabama. Had some experience at left tackle, but yeah, I just he wasn't like a super athlete either. Very strong, and very powerful run blocker, especially. So a lot of teams projected that he would be a really good guard at the next level, but we needed a left tackle really, really desperately. So I think again, B is kind of where I'm at. Where again, rookie tackle, he's going to have to grow into it. Definitely still has some potential to his game. He's still fairly raw, I would say, for the most part. Is a strong mauler in the run game. His base isn't as sturdy as you'd like for it to be at somebody at his size. He kind of gets knocked back a little bit too often. unfortunately, in my opinion. So that's a little bit of a knock on him. And then he was pretty good at the beginning of the year, but he was getting a lot of like chip assistance from the running backs and tight ends, and so I think that helped a little bit at the beginning of the year. But towards the end of the year, when they started putting him on an island a little bit, he got exposed a little bit. So would like to see him improve his technique and his base going forward. But I'm still pretty optimistic, and we needed that badly. So I'm overall happy with the pick.
And I think, again, you nailed it. I don't think I need to cover much. I'm just a little bit lower just because the playing out of position, like finding his footing, I think he's going to be fine. I think that size combined with, the history of the offensive line coach there, that he's gonna make him into a player. So I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah.
Penix. Now we've definitely got some differing ones on this. So I'll talk and then I'll let you take over since you got the C- grade.
Yeah.
I ultimately landed on a B, and this is one of those that you could kind of argue any grade. I mean, literally A to F, you could make a case for. Ultimately landed on B. I think a lot of it was situationally this one played out perfect, and that's ultimately why I'm higher on it. Is because for Penix's case at least, maybe not the Falcons, but for Michael Penix, the best case scenario was maybe have no pressure coming in, which is exactly what happened. Started as the number 2. Kirk Cousins isn't playing up to expectations, and then Penix comes in and saves the day. And that's exactly what happened. So ultimately, I think B is fine. He obviously played really well and showed the talent for his throwing ability. So B is what I gave him.
Yeah. I'm a bit lower for, I'll touch on a couple points. So, one, I still feel like a year ago, I thought, why are they taking quarterback? They could really firm up some other positions like edge rusher or something on defense maybe to help them really become a truly elite defense with Raheem Morris coming into the building. I thought that maybe would have been the better idea. I kind of still think that now, a year later. I think they probably still would have been better off, getting their roster to a really high end level, especially in a weak division that they're in. Go ahead, make your point.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it until now, but Kirk Cousins is known to be a mentally. I love Kirk Cousins. He's a Viking. I got a soft spot for Kirk. Kirk Cousins is not the strongest mentally, so there's a question of, hey, does a healthy Kirk Cousins with no pressure to perform really being the guy, plus a defensive starter you take at 8 last year, how does that division play out? Versus taking Michael Penix, how much of a toll that took on Kirk. But yeah, continue.
No, that's a good point. I actually didn't think about that, but that's an excellent point too, that you've got that in the back of your head. That's tough when you just signed a 4-year contract with the team and then they just drafted your eventual replacement. It's kind of like, what are you supposed to do in that situation?
Yeah.
You're playing for your job because when you draft a rookie quarterback, the clock starts immediately upon that pick. And if you put them in, you can't go back. And obviously they won't be going back to Kirk Cousins. So he'll have to find a new home. But yeah, I think that whole thing. And then my other thing is that when Penix did come into the games there at the end of the year, they were hoping to provide that spark to get them into the playoffs. They ultimately didn't do that. So would have been a lot for a rookie to take that on. But again, I think that's why I'm a bit lower there, is that if he would have, come in and had the immediate impact that like Jayden Daniels, had for his team, I would have been a bit, a good bit higher on this one. But yeah, you make a good point though. Overall, this is obviously worked out just like you said. Kirk was not playing up to standard, and then Penix able to take over. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some differences on this one too. Actually, Rome Odunze for the Chicago Bears. Vikings fan. I'm trying not to let my bias seep through. I loved him as a prospect. I think he was my number 5 player. He's my number 5 player overall. So, Graham, I know we talked a bunch about him coming out. Loved his route running ability. Loved his hands. Like the stuff that you do technically sound, Graham and I are really fond of versus like some freak athlete type stuff. So we really liked Rome Odunze. Slightly disappointing. I wish his usage was better. I think the player going forward is going to be fine. But I think that they really wanted to make Keenan Allen like the focal point, like the guy, and kind of let Rome build into that role. So C for the production, and like ultimately I had higher expectations.
Yeah, that's totally fair. The reason I'm a bit higher is I wasn't sure what my expectations were really gonna be, because like you said, that kind of, you could argue, crowded receiver room that they had there. I wasn't sure how Shane Waldron was gonna draw up the plays for them to kind of get everybody fed, and so this is a little bit of projection for me, and maybe I just can't shake how much I love Rome Odunze, like you just talked about. So Yeah, we were both super high on him last year. So again, maybe I just can't shake that. So maybe there's a little bias there. But yeah, overall the production definitely wasn't there. I'm really interested to see again what Ben Johnson does with this whole roster, and I think that I think this guy will become their eventual wide receiver one. They still have DJ Moore, but I
This
think
feels like your Amon Ra. I'm gonna be honest. It feels
yeah.
like your Amon Ra.
I mean, you got DJ Moore too though, so maybe he could fill that role.
See,
And
that
so,
feels like a Jameson Williams to me.
maybe so. I mean, it'll be interesting, and maybe their offense won't be exactly like
Yeah.
Detroit, but and so we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's again for me, it's probably mostly projection, and again, maybe I just can't shake how much I love the guy.
Totally fair. And I'll go ahead and cover this one since we're Skull Nation over here. But
Yeah, go for it.
I want to first point out that overall grade, as opposed to our individual grades, is NA. Obviously, the injury was devastating for us Vikings fans. Super excited because we hadn't had a franchise like young quarterback, in since Christian Ponder, and we know how that played out. Excuse me. But no, everything that I saw from him, total professional, even in the offseason, the way he's handled Sam Darnold's success, not knowing if he was going to be the guy next year because Sam Darnold was playing so well. Thankfully, it worked out for JJ, and ultimately Sam's last 2 games ended up being stinkers. I loved what I saw in the preseason. I loved him coming out. I had a first-round grade on him last year. I'm super excited for the future. The injury is enough to knock him down from an A minus to a B plus in that A range to the B. But with Kevin O'Connell, I fully trust the system.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to, say too much here. Again, I think the injury has to knock down the grade a little bit. We know with quarterbacks, though, they can usually bounce back unless it's like an Achilles or something really devastating. So I'm not too concerned about that. He's still obviously super young. I also had a first-round grade on him last year, and he really showed out in that preseason game. And again, it's the preseason. Will Levis looked really good in the preseason, too.
You just want to see flashes. That's all we want to see is flashes.
And that's what he did. He executed, and we know that he could run that system. And the fact that Kevin O'Connell, and I know you've talked about this a lot, the fact that he's got as much faith in him as it sounds like he does, that's a good sign. I would trust him in that sense as well.
Yeah, certainly. So we'll go ahead to number 11 here. Olu Fashanu. Graham, you want to go first?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I don't know if there's really too much to say just because he didn't play like a ton this year, but when he did play, he looked really good. So I'm really going to be curious to see what he does next year. But yeah, he looked really strong when he came in and played for them. So I went B minus again, optimism going forward. He was a good prospect as well. I liked Olu Fashanu better than JC Latham, so I would have actually, as a Titans fan, preferred this pick at 7 over JC Latham. So we'll see what happens. Again, rookie up and downs like a normal rookie has, but he looked really strong when he came into play. So I'm optimistic going forward.
Jets had some veterans across our offensive line that they wanted to kind of like put in front of Rodgers and make sure that everything was sound for him, obviously. So Olu, like you said, wasn't getting a ton of playing time, which is why I have him at a B minus. But yeah, in his reps, he looked good. So not a ton to say. Graham and I are skill position guys, quarterback guys. So when it comes to offensive linemen, we're trying our best. We're learning. But ultimately, we landed on the grades we did overall as a B for Olu Fashanu.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. You take this one away for first.
Bo Nix. This is actually somebody, and I hate being that guy where it's like, oh, I told you so, but like
we should have started a year earlier, so everybody had the receipts. Nobody
right,
has the
no,
receipts except for you and I.
I know. I have my big board from last year. That's about it, but that's not going to work. It's whatever. But no, Bo Nix was. I really liked his ability as a processor, and my favorite destination for him was with Sean Payton. And that's ultimately what happened, and I had a feeling that he was going to end up being good. And that feeling has come to fruition. So, great year. Same with Jaden Daniels. They exceeded expectations. Bo Nix came in after the first game or so and ended up balling out. So, I'm excited for the future with them, and I ultimately like Bo Nix a lot.
Yeah, I think it's really good for them that they are able to now build around their franchise quarterback, and the fact that getting a franchise quarterback automatically it gives you pretty close to an A grade, and maybe I should have been a little higher just for that sheer reason. They got their franchise quarterback at number 12. QB 5 in this draft or 6, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Penix or no? Taken.
Yeah. Bo Nix. Yeah.
So this, the fact you got your franchise quarterback as the 6th quarterback taken is really. Should give you an A probably by itself. But
yeah,
I'm a little bit lower just for the same kind of reason as I did with Jaden Daniels. Bumping it down just slightly was just because I think the fit is just so good. And again, that's really probably not totally fair. It's not a knock on Bo Nix, but I think that it does matter that the system is really QB friendly and plays to his strengths. And the good thing for Bo Nix is that Sean Payton's not leaving, so he'll be able to maintain that continuity within the offense. So I probably could have went A on this one, but I'm going to stick with my B plus.
You know what? I think B plus looking back is not that bad of a grade because the big knock on Bo Nix is what does the ceiling look like? Like, is this his ceiling? What we just saw last year? Otherwise, this probably is a B plus grade. But
Right.
no, I think both of our grades are fully acceptable, so I'm cool on that. And this one we barely even need to talk about. I mean, this was like I talked about the best rookie being Joe Alt. Brock Bowers slipped my mind. So Brock Bowers was the best rookie in my opinion. We both had A plus.
Yeah, people were mad at one voter. Jaden was almost unanimous rookie of the year, except for one voter did put Brock Bowers as their vote, and a lot of people were mad at it. I don't really understand why everybody's so mad. Like
I don't
Brock
hate it.
Bowers is going to be an All-Pro player.
I don't hate it.
Like
Yeah,
very
he was.
soon.
He already was.
Oh, he was. Right.
Yeah,
you're
I think
right.
he was. He?
Was he
He
second
might have
team?
been. He might have been first team, dude.
Okay, yeah,
He
I'll
might
to
have been
look
first
back on
team.
that one. But yeah, I mean, this guy's a stud, and this was again, like you kind of said with Joe Alt. This was like the easiest hit ever. Like
Yeah.
everybody knew this guy was an elite prospect, and so the fact they got him at 13 on a roster that's void of talent, like let's just get the best stud player we can, and obviously very, very much a blue player. So yeah, easy A plus.
Yeah, I like that. Fuaga, this was someone that out of Oregon State, people mover, run blocker, got a lot of burn for the Saints, unlike a lot of these offensive linemen. So, I think a lot of where my grade comes from is just because the Saints are so desperate for talent, especially on the offensive line. I think you feel good about with what you did last year in moving forward.
Yeah, not much here aside from that. Like again, a rookie tackle especially is going to have their ups and downs, and Fuago is very consistent throughout the year and played pretty much the entire year as well. So, shoring up your left tackle for forever is really a good thing, and that's obviously what you want going forward. So yeah, I think he probably played the best out of probably aside from Joe Alt, of course, all the other rookie tackles.
Yeah. Leatu Latu, first defensive player off the board at 15, pretty wild. I remember the war room talk, like, we got the best player in the draft at 15. I thought it was always fun. This is what sticks in my mind when I think of Leatu Latu. But, yeah, obviously had the injuries coming out. Really strong rookie year, a lot to feel good about going forward. Turned it up more at the end of the year. It felt like B's just a solid grade overall, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think that the reason I'm a little bit lower is because you did end up taking the first defensive player in the draft, and it wasn't the biggest hit you could have, so that's why I'm a little bit lower on that. But overall, you're right, very solid. I would say you're pretty much for the most part happy with that pick at this point. Yeah, and here Byron Murphy, he had some injuries a little bit as well, I believe, and that kind of slowed him down a little bit. But same kind of thing. He was very good for them when he did play. His former teammate at Texas, T'Vondre Sweat, was obviously a beast for us in Tennessee. And Byron Murphy had a strong impact for Seattle's defense as well. So I'm also high on him going forward. So we'll see exactly what they do. But he was a Mike McDonald, fit, and it did make sense at the time, especially too.
Dude, I hate you for this picture. You did us dirty with the picture with beating up
I
on our
know.
Vikings, but no, he this game sticks out in my mind obviously because I was super tuned in. Vikings offensive line was pretty poor, and he absolutely was making some plays against us. But B is a fair grade. I think you're happy if you're the Seahawks.
For sure.
And I'll go ahead and cover this one too, since this is my team as well.
Go for it.
Yeah, C minus. 85% of this was lack of playing time, lack of production. And preseason he looked strong. He had his games later in the year where he started to play. He had an interception in one of the games later. It might have even been the Seahawks. But later in the season he had a big interception. Great player. Like, I feel really good about him. Young player as well. I believe he's 21 or 22 at the moment, so a lot of future ahead of him. He's just playing behind two Pro Bowlers, so I can't give him higher than a C, but C minus is where we landed.
Yeah, no, I agree. Same thing, production, and kind of from what I saw, just maybe didn't fit the bill of where he was drafted at. And I know they traded up for that pick as well with the Texans. And so, again, you would have liked to see a little bit more out of your first round player you traded up for. But I think he should be good going forward, right?
Yeah, no, he definitely. We actually traded up with the Texans to, I think it was 23, and then traded up again to get him
Oh,
at
right,
17. So
right,
we,
right.
we lost the trade by all chart projections and how we did based on the numbers, but Kwesi Adolfo-Munso, the Vikings GM, said it best. Like when you see a player like this who could have been a someone that we had mocked to the Falcons at 8, it was a top
Yep.
10 guy.
He often was. Yeah.
Yeah, so but pre-draft I had an hour before the draft. If you said we got Dallas Turner, I would have thought we picked him at 11. Like there's no way I would have thought we took him with that later pick. So good player. I'm excited for the future.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, yeah, and then same thing with Amarius Mims here. Not too much because again, he played most of the year for the Bengals, and like you mentioned when we were off camera, he was one of their better offensive linemen the entire year. And so again, rookie tackle, it's very hard to come in have an impact like he did. And so yeah, again, he doesn't have probably like again like the high end, like super high ceiling of that, maybe of like a JC Latham or, an Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt for that matter too. But, played very well. And I think you are happy with him being your left tackle, franchise left tackle.
Frame. 6'7", like long arms, big dude, big body, protect Joe Burrow. You can't be mad at the pick. That's all you really want out of this selection, and that's what they got.
Not at all. Yeah.
And then Jared Verse.
This is your boy. So
this is my boy, dude. This was my number 3 player in the whole class behind Caleb Williams and Drake May. So I was incredibly high on Jared Verse. I think of, like I mentioned, frame with the previous pick. This is a Myles Garrett clone when it comes to frame. Obviously not as freaky of a build. He's not as cut up as Myles Garrett, but 40 similar, arm length is similar, height is similar, weight is similar. I just saw all pro player coming out of college, and ultimately that's what happened. And getting him at 19, the best player in the class on the defensive side of the ball, you can't do better than that.
Yeah, and again, this is why I was a bit lower on like the Colts, with Latu there, because you of course easily could have taken Jared Verse and that sort of thing. But neither here nor there. This was a guy that again you were super high on, and so then as a result, I watched a little bit more and was also high on, as a result of that. And then yeah, we talked about it in our last video. The Rams just hit on their draft picks, so no surprise that they did so here. Yeah, not much else to say. Great player.
Yeah. Troy Fatanu, we had all NAs. I mean, this was like little to no playing time. I wanted to give him a higher grade because this was one of my favorite players. This was my favorite offensive lineman. Not necessarily the best, but definitely my favorite coming out of Washington. I loved his position versatility, technicality, really strong hands, great base, like a Christian Darrisaw type base where it's like super low, like fires the hands, like quick drop or kickback. Like I really liked Fatanu, excuse me. All the F names are going together.
Some of them are similar. Fuaga, yeah.
Way too close, but I like the future of Fatanu, so we'll see where it goes moving forward.
Yeah, I think he got hurt in like the second or third preseason game, so there really wasn't much to go off of. And again, I'm with you. I liked his position versatility quite a bit. So I'll be interested to see where he plays. I think he was at tackle for them, but obviously he could play guard as well. So yeah, definitely excited about his future.
I liked him at guard, but yeah, we'll definitely see. Chop Robinson. This was arguably the best. This was a guy up for defensive rookie of the year. Great player. I loved him coming out of Penn State as well. I say I love all these guys. It's hard not to love all first round guys,
Well,
but
but last year there were a lot of really good first round players. Like it was a
Yeah.
very deep first round. So it's actually it's not always like this. This year we're not going to feel this way for sure.
yeah, definitely no.
This
We're
next draft.
it's if this class and last class were combined, I feel like a lot of the guys for this upcoming class would be like second, third rounders compared to like
100%.
what this class was. Which ultimately it's a weak top half in first round, anyways. But yeah, Chop Robinson, great player. I really quick wanted to mention because I was watching some Broshmo again today. He's a Dolphins fan, and a lot of the injuries on the offensive or on the defensive line have ultimately led him to getting more playing time and really standing out. Jalen Phillips was hurt a lot. The other pass rusher, I'm blanking on his name, but he was hurt a lot. So ultimately, he got a lot of playing time, and that led to him shining.
Yeah, and I gave my grade as well because he has had some good production this year. Oh well, let me take that back. He didn't have like the sack numbers, which again we've talked about before. How sacks maybe isn't the best indicator of how impactful a defensive lineman is for the game, but other statistic measures he performed very very strongly in. So that's a positive for sure. And then like you said, Jalen Phillips being hurt. coming off like the ace. Or I think he was Achilles as well.
He was
actually.
Achilles, yeah.
Yeah. So coming off of that injury, they needed to fill that hole, and they did. So let's get both of them healthy, playing on the opposite sides of each other. I think that'd be a dangerous combo.
It's a strong D line if you can get the health out of the equation. It's a really strong D line. We'll see where they go this next class. I think D end and edge might be another potential landing spot for them this
Keep
upcoming
building it
class.
up, yeah. So this was one of this was my favorite defensive back last year. At Quinion Mitchell, the fact that he fell all the way to the Eagles was frustrating because the Eagles it's so frustrating how it just seems like the Eagles always just take the most obvious best player, but then nobody else in the league takes them ahead of them. So
And it works out perfect. It's so
it
annoying.
always works out right.
It's so annoying.
Good for the Eagles, though. Obviously just coming off the Super Bowl win, so he was a big part of that. They before this year, their defensive back room was not that strong, and then they obviously got C.J. Gardner-Johnson back. They drafted Quinion Mitchell. They drafted Cooper DeJean as well. So they really reloaded on their defensive back room.
Dude, how about the turnaround the whole defense had? I mean, I remember last year that unit was like, or sorry, 2 years ago at this point, was maybe the worst unit in the NFL. I mean, it was a bottom 5 unit altogether, right. Especially that defensive backfield. And to flip it like they did now with Vic Fangio
to be the number one defense,
dude. I mean, it's the Eagles are the creme de la creme of how to run a franchise in every aspect.
Right. Yeah. So good for them. Great pick.
Graham, you get BT right here.
I would say I'm going to talk about this one because I love Brian Thomas Jr.
And he's cooking. He's cooking your team in the picture, so it makes sense for you to talk.
I evened it out because I had to have Byron Murphy going crazy against you guys. I had to put
I appreciate it. Yeah,
cooked and he did. But no, so Brian Thomas Jr. Awesome player. I love his route running ability. That was not something I was expecting out of him too much coming into the league. Would be his ability to run routes as effectively as he did. We knew he had the speed after running that sub 4.35 40 I think he had at the combine. So he was a burner, had the contested catch ability, all that good stuff. But yeah, really expanded his route tree at the next level. So Liam Cohen's getting a stud X receiver for them. I really like his potential, and obviously played a lot of the season with Mac Jones at quarterback too. And so that's a feat in and of itself. So, and the fact you got him at where they did, at 23, because this is I think the trade back with you guys, right? I think they were at 17.
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah, and they got Brian Thomas Jr. Arguably, you could make a case for best receiver in this class just based on last year alone.
Yeah. So. Oh man, if you factor in the trade, this is certainly an A+. I probably going back would probably change that. But I talked about my hits, and I have a lot of them. But this is the biggest whiff I've had, probably in like 5 years. I've maybe not 5 years, but maybe 3 or so years when I've been really taking it seriously and mocking and creating big boards and all that. This was maybe one of my biggest whiffs. I was so scared of the lack of time playing the position, playing across from Malik Neighbors, Jane Daniels doing his thing, that I didn't see the potential, and ultimately I was proven so wrong, but I'm glad I was, because the Jags ultimately got a guy out of it. So big ups to Brian Thomas Jr. What a player. I mean, he's a beast. Yeah. Terrion Arnold, I'm going to rip Terrion Arnold. No, I'm not going to rip him a new one, but he's ultimately was maybe the worst DB in football last year, especially early in the year. Super handsy, which is what you expected. He was a physical guy. He was actually my top corner in the class. It feels like all my guys that I like fall to division rivals with Rome Odunze and Terrion Arnold, but that's besides the point. Super handsy, super physical, still looking for his footing in the NFL. Kind of a liability, early in his career, but I trust the Lions to make him into a player, and I trust the player ultimately what he put on film at Alabama. So I feel good about him going forward, but for right now, it's a D for me.
Yeah, seemed like a home run at the time for sure. A lot of people's corner. CB1 in this draft last year, and then fell all the way to the Lions, who needed a lockdown corner. So yeah, hopefully he improves going forward, but just wasn't a great rookie outing for him.
Yeah, not much to say besides that. Jordan Morgan, again, not a ton to say. Just a solid offensive lineman. Again, position versatility. This is someone who really could play anywhere in the offensive line. So I do like that. Got some burn and made the most of it.
Yeah, And not much to say. Yeah, didn't play. He played a little bit, here and there, looked okay. So hopefully he improves. I think he played guard mostly for them. So taking a guard in the first round, maybe that's a question as well. But yeah, we'll see how he improves going forward here.
I remember at the time Packers fans were not necessarily happy with this pick, but looking back, it's probably going to be fine for the future. Protect your asset. So asset in Jordan Love, obviously. So I don't mind this.
Yeah. Graham Barton on the flip side of that, great interior offensive lineman. This was another guy that people were very high on in draft season here, and yeah, he played like it. So not much to say. Great job. Again, maybe taking a center first round is a little questionable as well, but why not lock up that position if you got a stud player like this?
With the retirement they had, again, it feels like when I hit record, I blank on all the names and all my knowledge goes out the window. They had some huge offensive linemen retire in the middle there, their interior. So Graham Barton stepping in, doing a phenomenal job. Him and Cam Jurgens are two of the best offensive linemen on the interior, or two of the best offensive linemen last year, and they both happen to play on the interior. So Graham Barton balled out.
Yeah. Yeah, Darius Robinson here. We weren't super big fans of the pick at the time, and he didn't play much. And then when he did play last few games of the year, he looked terrible. So hopefully he improves going forward here. But yeah, not super high on it at this point.
Yeah, neither, like Graham just said, neither of us were big Darius Robinson fans. There was buzz of him sneaking in the first round. We were more like second or third round. We feel good about taking him, but first was just too rich for us, and ultimately, he ended up having a lackluster year, mostly due to the injury, but he didn't look good when he was healthy and played. So there's that. Xavier Worthy here. I actually traded. Side note: I traded Brian Thomas for Xavier Worthy in Dynasty. So initially lost the trade, and then towards the back end, X started showing why he was that guy. Much more than just a speed guy, which I kind of pegged him as. Like, this is your Tyreek Hill replacement. But similar to Tyreek Hill, this is someone who has way more capability than just as a deep threat, as a vertical threat guy. He actually has some real route running potential, which is uncommon for guys with his makeup. So I put an A ultimately, especially given the Super Bowl performance. Granted, it was, last ditch effort, and they're just throwing shit at the fan, but Xavier Worthy played great, so I got him as an A.
Yeah. Yeah, on Xavier Worthy here, I a little bit lower just because I think the frame is still a little bit in question, so I think that's going to be something to look at going forward here. Definitely high on the fact that he is much more of a route runner than we realized, or at least I realized. Definitely, obviously broke the combine record, so we knew he was a speedster. We knew it based on tape as well, but yeah, definitely improved his route tree as well. So I think you mentioned this to me one time, again off camera, but this has been their Tyreek Hill replacement. So they filled that void. I think they still need somebody who can win one-on-one. I think the Rashee Rice injury hurt them quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so I think they would have, maybe had some more help, obviously, at receiver if he would have stayed healthy. But yeah, I think X will be a good player going forward for them. I don't know if he'll be as productive as Tyreek Hill was for them because, obviously different caliber player there. But yeah, I think it was a good pick. And they traded up a few spots to get him. So.
And you know what? This is just now, as you were talking, I was reminded of something. I don't see Xavier Worthy as a wide receiver one. He's definitely a great player, but he feels more like a compliment. And even that's what Tyreek Hill was ultimately, because Kelsey was the guy, and that opened up opportunities for him. So I'm starting for mock drafts in the future. I think tight end could be an interesting spot for the Chiefs if someone were to fall. So maybe that's an interesting spot going forward. But no, ultimately, I like Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, good pick about that. And then, yeah, Tyler Guyton, I think he was probably the worst rookie first-round lineman, maybe, at least first-round tackle for sure. So just really didn't play very well, and I'm not super optimistic on him going forward. But, maybe, again, it's tough for offensive linemen, especially tackles. There are a lot of up and downs, and there have been guys who have not performed well at first and then picked it up. So maybe he does, but as of right now, not super high on it.
I gave it a C+. I think I actually liked him coming out of college, but I mean, ultimately the whole Cowboys, brought down everything. So there was no run game. They couldn't throw the ball a lot due to the injuries. So it just made everyone look bad. Kind of feel indifferent about this one. I don't really know what the future's going to hold, if I'm being honest. But we'll see. Again, position versatility here. We'll see what happens going forward. And then Nate Wiggins. The Ravens have my favorite draft strategy, and I'm sure you feel the same way, where they say, I don't care who it is, we're just going to take the best guy.
Yeah. Position value, whatever. Like, if you already filled up a spot there, just take the guy.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what they did here. They were like, Nate Wiggins, we see 4.2 speed, great corner, has good tape. Let's just take him. And he played really well. B minus is more of like, again, a lot of rookies who have the play style of Nate Wiggins, they warrant penalties. They're physical. It's kind of just what happens. So, you take the good with the bad, and B minus is a good grade considering the spot they took him.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a little bit where the grade's at too. Positional value, not positional value. Obviously, corner is important, but just like the fact they maybe didn't need a corner, and so that's something to consider. But yeah, I feel overall pretty good about this one. It was very solid rookie year, I would say.
Every year their position. I mean, even they took Kyle Hamilton at safety. I feel like I just talked about this, but they had Kyle Hamilton as a safety. That's what it was. Okay, thank you for the reminder. So I don't need to beat a dead horse here, but they just take the best player, so that's what happened. Slick Rick, dude. I've got a Florida fan who was telling me about Ricky, and I wasn't super high, but I felt good about what he did coming out of Florida. But obviously, getting shot in the chest is a pretty difficult injury to overcome. So I think he did well, especially it was the Chiefs game, or no, there was a different game. It's slipping my mind again because of recording, but he looked phenomenal out there running routes. Definitely got that route runner build. I'm excited now that Debo is looking for trades, that we can see Ricky maybe slide into more of like a gadget role with Kyle Shanahan. So I'm excited to see that.
That's why I'm a bit higher in hindsight with the Debo trade coming to potential fruition and probably will happen, I imagine. I like Ricky sliding into that role. Obviously came back from like an insane injury, so I think that's a positive. And then of course he's a playmaker, and he was at Florida, so I like the pick. I think it was good, especially in hindsight with Debo going out of the building probably soon.
Many men.
Yeah, we'll finish here with Xavier Legette here, our hometown Panthers here. They wanted their guy. They traded up for him into the first round to get him. Only a couple spots, but they still did trade up to get him. I didn't love him as a prospect. Again, as you mentioned, we're usually more fond of the technically sound guys versus like the freak athletes, and this is definitely, he's in that freak athlete mold, so he's certainly still got some upside. Battle drops the whole year. Wasn't always super healthy either. Not the most polished route runner. So there's still some potential there, but overall, I didn't love the pick for those reasons.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, you already touched on it. We're not big physical guys. Like when it comes to we don't like big physical guys when it comes to receivers. But yeah, I didn't love him out of South Carolina. It's really hard, and I ultimately bopped him down to a C minus. I was thinking more like C plus. I like the upside. But I bumped him down just because if you have someone like Jalen Coker beating you out for reps and, maybe taking away some of that shine, someone at a Holy Cross, taking the reps from you and taking the shine from you, I can't give him higher than a C minus.
And the last point I'll make on this one too is if you're a first round receiver, and even if you're at the back half of the first round, you're still probably have the expectation that you should come in and be the wide receiver one for the future. And they've still got questions at receiver, and they probably need a true alpha X receiver, and he's just not that. So that's also why I'm a bit lower on this one. But
that is the ultimate tell. If we're talking about receiver to the Panthers at 8 potentially this next year, that should tell you everything you know about them taking a first round receiver last year. So fine player, he could be solid. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, that's the video. That's the mock draft, or sorry, not the mock draft. We've got the grading the players for last year's first round. So any last thoughts, G?
No, that's pretty much it. We will see you guys soon and come out with some more videos here. So appreciate your support. Talk to you later.
Till next time.